The sun was high, its golden light dancing across the waves, when a sleek white yacht cut smoothly through the water. On its deck stood a woman, calm and confident, though her presence seemed to stir whispers among the people who watched from nearby boats. They looked at her designer dress, the polished railings, and the spotless crew attending to every detail, and they laughed. To them, she looked like someone trying too hard, out of place among the true elite of the harbor. A few voices even carried over the water, mocking her for daring to stand on a luxury yacht as if she didn't belong there. She heard it all, but she didn't respond. Instead, she just smiled faintly, her eyes steady on the horizon. What the onlookers didn't know was that this woman wasn't new to the sea. Behind her calm expression was a story deeper than the waters beneath that yacht. The people around her judged by appearances by the brand of her sunglasses, the shine of her jewelry, and the way she carried herself. But while they whispered and sneered, she stood taller, holding a quiet dignity that didn't need to be defended. And then it happened. A shadow fell across the water as a massive gray silhouette came into view, a Navy destroyer, powerful and commanding, slicing through the waves with unmatched authority. The chatter around the harbor fell silent, all eyes turning to the colossal ship that suddenly dwarfed every vessel nearby. The destroyer's crew lined the rails, standing in sharp formation. Then, in a moment that froze every mocking voice, the great warship turned slightly and delivered a full salute directed not at the harbor, not at the gathered crowd, but at the woman on the luxury yacht. The laughter stopped. The smirks vanished. Shock painted the faces of those who had mocked her only moments before. Who was this woman? Why would a Navy destroyer, a symbol of respect and honor, salute her? The answers weren't on the surface, and her story was only beginning. The silence after the salute lingered longer than the sound of the waves. People on the nearby boats stared, some exchanging hushed guesses, others simply frozen in disbelief. The woman remained still, her expression unchanged, though a quiet spark in her eyes suggested she had expected this moment. It wasn't arrogance, it was something else, something deeper, like a memory carried with honor. Whispers began to spread across the harbor. Was she related to someone in the Navy? Did she once serve herself? Or was this some kind of staged performance? None of those watching knew the truth, and the uncertainty only added to the weight of the scene. The yacht that had seemed like a symbol of luxury just minutes earlier now felt different, as if it was more than just a pleasure vessel. What most people didn't know was that her connection to the sea stretched back years. She wasn't born into wealth, nor was she someone chasing status. Long before she ever stepped onto the polished deck of a yacht, her life was tied to discipline, service, and sacrifice. But she carried those chapters quietly, without the need to remind others of where she came from. For her honor wasn't meant to be announced, it lived in silence. In the way she carried herself, still, the crowd couldn't shake the image of the destroyer's salute. Sailors don't offer that kind of respect lightly. To them, it meant recognition of something significant, perhaps even extraordinary. And here was this woman, calm and unshaken, letting the moment speak for itself. The mocking voices from before were gone, replaced by restless curiosity. Questions swirled in every corner of the harbor. Who exactly was she? Why did the Navy salute her? And what truth lay hidden behind her quiet smile? The answers, like the sea itself, ran far deeper than anyone watching could imagine. The destroyer slowly passed by, its salute complete, but the echoes of that gesture clung to the air like an unanswered question. On one of the smaller boats nearby, a man in a navy blue blazer pulled out his phone, already typing furiously, convinced this was a story worth uncovering. Others whispered theories, their voices low but urgent, as though speaking too loudly might break the spell of the moment. The woman on the yacht, however, remained unbothered. her calm presence only fueling the curiosity around her. Beneath the surface, though, the conflict was more complex than appearances suggested. For her, the yacht wasn't just about luxury, it was a promise she had made to herself long ago. A symbol of survival, of building something new from pieces of a life that had once been marked by storms no one else could see. The destroyer's salute wasn't just a show of respect, it was a reminder of ties she could never fully sever. Meanwhile, among the onlookers, tension began to shift. Some felt embarrassed for mocking her so openly. Others, too proud to admit their mistake, grew sharper in their suspicion. If she truly had ties to the Navy, then why was she standing here alone on a yacht instead of surrounded by officials? Or family? What kind of past could command such honor and still leave her so solitary? A subplot began to form in the minds of those watching a contest of truth versus perception. Was she a retired officer, a decorated hero, or perhaps the widow of someone whose legacy still carried weight in the fleet? Or was there something else, something even more unexpected, hidden beneath her polished exterior? Every ripple of the water seemed to carry more questions. The woman didn't answer any of them. She only stood taller, letting silence work as her shield, while the weight of the destroyer's salute settled heavy on every heart watching. The true conflict was no longer between her and the mocking crowd, it was between appearance and reality. And nobody knew which side would win. The harbor was no longer filled with laughter. What had started as casual gossip turned into a restless silence, broken only by the sound of the waves slapping against hulls. All eyes stayed fixed on the woman, as though the truth of her story might suddenly slip from her calm expression. The destroyer had moved farther out to sea, but its presence lingered like a shadow nobody could ignore. The salute had transformed her from a target of ridicule into a figure of mystery, and the tension around her kept tightening. On the far end of the dock, a group of men debated in low voices. One insisted he had seen her face before, maybe in an old article or a framed photo in a naval museum. Another swore she must have connections at the highest level, maybe even linked to classified missions. None of them agreed, but all of them were drawn in by the same thought: this woman wasn't who she appeared to be. The yacht itself seemed to hold secrets too. Its design, though luxurious, carried subtle details that hinted at more than just wealth. A discreet insignia etched into the railing. A plaque near the stern, half hidden, bearing numbers that looked less like decoration and more like identification. Those with sharper eyes noticed, and whispers spread again. Was this yacht once part of something larger, something tied to the very Navy ship that had saluted her? The woman's silence became heavier than any speech. Each passing minute made the crowd leaned further into their own questions. The once mocking voices were now filled with uneasy respect, but also fear of discovering that they had insulted someone who held a story far greater than they could imagine. And then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, the yacht's radio crackled to life. A crisp, authoritative voice carried across the deck. And though the words were not yet clear, every person within earshot held their breath. Something was about to be revealed, and it would change everything they thought they knew about her. The radio static faded, and then the voice cut through, clearly measured, commanding, and unmistakably military. Vessel on the harbor, stand by for acknowledgement. The words were ordinary, yet the way they were spoken carried weight, like they weren't meant for just any yacht drifting in calm waters. The crowd leaned forward, straining to hear. But the woman didn't flinch. She stepped closer to the console, her hand resting lightly on the edge, as though she had done this countless times before. What startled everyone most wasn't her calmness, it was what came next. The destroyer, now turning in the distance, slowed its course, its radar visibly fixed on the yacht. For a warship of that size to adjust position for a private vessel was unheard of. Then the voice on the radio spoke again, sharper this time. "Confirm identification code." The harbor erupted in whispers. An identification code. Yachts didn't carry military codes. That was something reserved for ships with classified ties, vessels that once operated under missions no one outside, though Navy would ever know about. Suspicion quickly turned into awe. The woman didn't hesitate. She reached into a small compartment near the helm, pulled out a worn leather folder, and, with a steady hand, read a sequence of numbers and letters into the radio. For a moment, silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of the yacht's engines. Then, to the disbelief of every onlooker, the destroyer signaled back with a long, formal acknowledgement. This wasn't routine, was recognition. The whispers around the harbor grew louder, mixing with gasps and wide-eyed stares. The mocking crowd had no words left. There had been any doubt about her connection to the Navy before. It had just shattered. But why was her yacht carrying a code linked to the fleet? And what history did she share with the destroyer now circling like a guardian? The salute had been shocking enough, but this second revelation pulled the mystery into dangerous territory. She wasn't just respected, she was known. Known in ways that raised far more questions than answers. The stakes had just risen, and the harbor could feel